Imagine you're on a plane. Suddenly, the crew announces that the pilot has made a dangerous decision. He's not a terrorist, he's not trying to crash the plane on purpose. In fact, he simply refuses to listen to the control tower's warnings. He ignores the instruments, disregards the risks, and trusts only his instincts. Now think about this. What is more dangerous? Someone who intends to do harm, or someone who is simply blind to their own mistakes? Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a theologian and anti-Nazi resistance fighter, believed that stupidity is a greater threat than malice. He wasn't referring to a lack of intelligence, but rather to a kind of intellectual and moral blindness that prevents people from questioning their actions and beliefs. A malicious person can be reasoned with, challenged, or even restrained, but a person consumed by stupidity is immune to logic. They don't just refuse to change their minds, they become even more confident when confronted with facts. If stupidity is more dangerous than evil, what does that mean for our world? Have history's greatest tragedies happened because of evil individuals or because of the passive compliance of ordinary people? And if stupidity is truly a force more powerful than we realize, is there a way to escape it? These questions don't have simple answers, but throughout this video, we're going to explore them together. To understand why stupidity can be more dangerous than evil, we first need to distinguish it from ignorance. Ignorance is simply a lack of knowledge. It can be corrected with information, with learning. An ignorant person can change their mind when exposed to new facts, but stupidity is something deeper. Stupidity doesn't come from a lack of information. It comes from a refusal to think critically. It is a psychological barrier against change, a shield against anything that threatens already established beliefs. According to a study published in the Review of General Psychology, confirmation bias makes our brains reject evidence that contradicts what we already believe. This means that the more someone clings to a stupid belief, the harder it becomes to make them see reality. Social media amplifies this problem. Algorithms show us only what we want to see, reinforcing our certainties and isolating us from different opinions. As a result, modern stupidity is not just an individual trait, but a collective phenomenon. The real danger is not just in the person who refuses to learn, but in the environment that encourages them to stay that way. If stupidity acts as a barrier to critical thinking, imagine the impact when it becomes a collective force. Philosopher Hannah Arendt studied how totalitarian regimes exploited this passivity to solidify their power. She analyzed Adolf Eichmann, one of the key figures behind the logistics of the Holocaust. He was not a bloodthirsty monster. In fact, he was just an ordinary bureaucrat who followed orders without questioning the consequences. This behavior is not rare. The Milgram experiment conducted in the 1960s demonstrated how ordinary people are capable of committing terrible acts when placed under an authority structure. In the study, volunteers were instructed to administer electric shocks to others. Even as they heard screams of pain, most continued pressing the buttons simply because a figure of authority told them to. History shows that oppressive regimes do not need millions of villains to thrive. They just need millions of obedient people who do not question what they are told. But what about democracies? Are we truly immune to this kind of manipulation? Or has stupidity already become an invisible pillar supporting modern systems of power? Stupidity doesn't just spread through authoritarian leaders. It spreads like a virus, infecting entire groups without them realizing it. Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, in their book Connected, demonstrated that ideas, both good and bad, spread through social networks just like diseases. A false idea, repeated often enough, can become an accepted truth. Social media accelerates this process. A study by Cambridge University found that false information spreads up to 6 times faster than verified truths. This happens because emotionally charged, oversimplified content generates more engagement. When something is repeated constantly, the human brain tends to accept it as fact. a phenomenon known as the illusion of truth effect. But this dynamic is not exclusive to the internet. Political, ideological, and even religious movements have used this mechanism long before social media existed. The difference is that now, it happens on a global scale in real time. If stupidity is contagious, how can we develop immunity against it? If intelligence gives us the tools to solve problems, why does stupidity keep winning? Bertrand Russell warned that societies tend to reward simplistic certainties while punishing critical thinking. This happens because complexity requires effort, while simple answers provide comfort. Neuroscience explains part of this phenomenon. Cognitive dissonance, studied by Leon Festinger, shows that when confronted with information that contradicts our beliefs, we experience psychological discomfort. To avoid this discomfort, our brains prefer to deny reality rather than accept it. In other words, thinking hurts. Stupidity saves us from that effort. A Stanford University study found that when challenged, people often double down on their wrong convictions rather than reconsider them. This explains why, even when presented with undeniable facts, many choose to cling to unfounded theories. Stupidity isn't just a failure in judgment, it's a defense mechanism against the complexity of reality. But if intelligence is undervalued and stupidity perpetuates itself, are we doomed to an endless cycle of mediocrity? Or is there still something we can do to change this dynamic? We live in the age of information, yet paradoxically, we have never been more vulnerable to misinformation. Technology, which should expand our knowledge, often reinforces misguided beliefs. A 2015 Microsoft study found that the average human attention span has dropped to just 8 seconds, shorter than that of a goldfish. This means we consume content quickly but rarely take the time to reflect on it. Social media doesn't just shorten our attention span, it shapes our worldview. Algorithms prioritize what keeps us engaged, and that often means sensationalist and divisive content. Tristan Harris, a former Google ethicist, argues that these platforms were designed to capture attention, not to inform accurately. The result? A society increasingly influenced by clickbait headlines rather than deep analysis. Technology could be an ally in the fight against stupidity, but instead, it is often used to reinforce it. Are we becoming slaves to a system that encourages us to think less? Or is there still a way to regain control over how we consume and process information? If stupidity is reinforced by social, political, and technological systems, escaping it requires more than just access to information. Dietrich Bonhoeffer argued that the only way to fight stupidity is through intellectual resistance. This means not only seeking knowledge, but also developing the ability to think critically, even when it puts us at odds with the majority. Hannah Arendt emphasized this idea, stating that the refusal to think is what enables the banality of evil. It is not enough to absorb information, we must analyze it, question it, and most importantly, take responsibility for our own beliefs and actions. When we stop doing this, we become nothing more than passive participants in a system that operates without reflection. Bertrand Russell believed that the antidote to stupidity lies in doubt. He argued that absolute certainties are, more often than not, dangerous. Critical thinking doesn't provide easy answers, but it protects us from manipulation. To escape the cycle of stupidity, we must be willing to ask uncomfortable questions and accept that the world is far more complex than we would like to believe. But is that enough to prevent stupidity from continuing to dominate? We return to the initial question: what is more dangerous, evil or stupidity? According to Bonhoeffer, Arendt and Russell, the answer is clear. Stupidity is more destructive because it does not act with intent, but with passivity. Evil can be recognized and confronted, but stupidity disguises itself as normality, spreading without resistance. History shows that the greatest tragedies were not just caused by evil individuals, but by crowds who simply accepted what they were told. This happens because questioning requires effort, and many prefer the comfort of conformity. The real danger is not just in leaders who manipulate, but in the willingness of people to be manipulated. But there is hope. The first step to escaping this cycle is to recognize that we are vulnerable to it. Questioning, seeking knowledge, and challenging our own beliefs are ways to build immunity against collective stupidity. If this video made you reflect, then we have already taken a step in the right direction. Now I ask you, how many times have you accepted something without questioning it? What can we do to prevent stupidity from shaping our world? Leave your answer in the comments and keep questioning everything.